2.
His Majesty is the handsomest prince I ever set eyes on. Above the usual height, with an extremely fine calf to his leg and a round face so beautiful it would become a pretty woman. Can you believe it? That's how a Venetian diplomat described Henry VIII in 1515, when the king was 24 years old.
Pastime with good company I love, and shall until I die hunt, sing, and dance. My heart is set. All goodly sport to my comfort. Who will stop me?
Henry is famous for his strength and 6 wives. The same diplomat also wrote, Henry speaks French, English, Latin, and Italian. He draws a bow with greater strength than any man in England and jousts marvelously. His subjects loved him, and he loved to show off. Every inch a king, and he not only looked like a king, he behaved like one. So first, impress your subjects. Everything was a show. Great ceremonies were dreamt up, particularly by his Chancellor, Cardinal Wolsey, and especially when he was meeting other kings, as he did in France in 1520. Henry had the event painted. Well, he couldn't have had it videoed, could he? And if show didn't work, then force might. Henry was a warrior king, trained to lead his army into battle. He was good at jousting, until he was knocked out for 2 hours in a joust when he was 45. He gave up after that. But behind the show, there was a different man. At court, Henry sat in a private room at his own table. When you were the boss and there's no stereo, you just employ your own musicians. There is the serious work of government, and Henry changes its style. He sets up departments of state to run things and puts ministers in charge. Powerful though he was, he gave power to other people. The king still had his councillors, but they were less like personal servants, though they still had to walk backwards when taking their leave of him. There were fewer of them, and they had more responsibilities. When he was older, he spent more and more time reading, usually religious books. 2 things concerned him most: who would follow him as king, and threats from outside enemies. He defeated Scottish armies several times, but failed to bring Scotland under the English crown, and there was always France. Peace with France was never long-lasting. Henry was constantly worried about defending England. Henry had guns and cannons, but they were unreliable and expensive, not to mention dangerous. Battles were hard fought, hand to hand with heavy swords, spears and bows and arrows. Henry had a great victory against the French in 1513. His invasion army was 35,000 men, the finest English army of the 16th century. Henry soon had the French army riding very fast in the opposite direction. That's why it's known as the Battle of the Spurs. Kings have been expected to lead troops into battle, and Henry had been trained to do this, but he was a modern king and he was quick to negotiate. And peace conferences were good opportunities for showing off. Remember the field of cloth of gold? This is Henry's temporary palace, with silk-lined walls and real glass windows. Oh, and the fountains flowed with wine. Tournaments and jousts were great opportunities for show. Wealth and splendor were displayed everywhere, even in the fancy armor. The best armor came from Milan in northern Italy, and from Flanders, the Netherlands as we know it, and from southern Germany. So he brought craftsmen to England and set up armories at Greenwich. Everything was on a grand scale. This is like all that stuff American footballers wear for protection. It's the top half of jousting armor and it looks very uncomfortable. Not as uncomfortable as a lance between the ribs. This is Henry's field armor. Protection was important, but the king needed to look splendid. Display was everything. The River Thames was London's main highway, and this was one of Henry's boats. It's called a shallop, and it's a proper limousine, the Rolls-Royce of its day. And while 10 men rowed, Henry sat at the back, no doubt reading a book, and usually hidden from view by curtains. Henry owned 53 palaces and houses. Many of them were on the Thames. Greenwich Palace, where he was born, was always a favourite. So was this, Hampton Court Palace.
Are you ready? Royal salute. Oars up. Oars down. Come forward. Are you ready? Paddle.
These are the present Queen's watermen, travelling the route that Henry would have covered. How's this for a king's eye view? Henry had 3 or 4 of these shallops on the go at any one time. There would have been about 50 on the Thames during his reign, and the river thronged with boats. It was London's main route for people and goods, the M25 without traffic jams. This is a 16th century map of the Kent coast, and it was part of a survey of the entire south coast. Remember, Henry was always worried about the threat of a French invasion and about coastal defences. He built up his navy at great expense, and he had to find the money. His finest ship was nicknamed Great Harry. It was launched at Greenwich in 1514. It had 5 masts, 5 rows of guns, weighed 1,000 tons and cost £14,000. Millions of pounds in today's money. It carried 301 sailors, 50 gunners and 349 soldiers. It was generally thought to be the greatest ship in the world. This is the Mary Rose. She was a true battleship, built for speed and firepower. Whilst Henry watched from Portsmouth Harbour, her crew rushed to one side of the ship to salute him. The ship lurched and sank. His navy gave Henry the chance to impress other peoples. He was genuinely fascinated by the possibilities of new and undiscovered lands. He encouraged explorers like Cabot and Thorne to sail the world, all of which was designed to add to his wealth and to the wealth of England. England was all important to Henry. He had ascended the throne without a struggle thanks to his father, Henry VII. He made important changes in government, and he always looked for opportunities to impress other kings and ambassadors. The scale of his hospitality was enormous. He fed up to 1,000 people a day at court. Being a king meant not only being boss, but also a provider. But all his outward displays and successes in wars and diplomacy did not solve the problem of who would succeed him. He wanted a son, or better still, several sons. When a son didn't appear, drastic measures were needed. Henry had a string of marriages. Here's the wedding album. Catherine of Aragon, mother of Mary I, married 1509, divorced 1533. Anne Boleyn, mother of Elizabeth I, married 1533, beheaded 1536. Jane Seymour, mother of Edward VI, married 1536, died 1537. Anne of Cleves, married 1540, divorced 1540. Catherine Howard, married 1540, beheaded 1542. Catherine Parr, married 1543, survived her husband, childless. And this is Cardinal Wolsey, Henry's Chancellor from 1515 to 1529, succeeded by Thomas Cromwell, who was executed in 1540.
Pastime with good company I love, and shall until I die hunt, sing, and dance. My heart is set. All goodly sport to my comfort. Who will stop me?
6 wives and 2 important chief ministers later, Henry had still not built the great dynasty he dreamt of.